This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to find out how you can volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Dear Enemy by Jean Webster. Part 17. Friday, 6:30. Dear Judy, Gordon is here, and a reformed man so far as his attitude toward my asylum goes. He has discovered the world-old truth that the way to a mother's heart is through the praise of her children, and he had nothing but praise for all 107 of mine. Even in the case of Loretta Higgins he found something pleasant to say. He thinks it's nice that she isn't cross-eyed. He went shopping with me in the village this afternoon, and was very helpful about picking out hair ribbons for a couple of dozen little girls. He begged to choose Sadie Kate's himself, and after many hesitations he hit upon orange satin for one braid and emerald green for the other. While we were immersed in this business, I became aware of a neighboring customer, ostensibly engaged with hooks and eyes, but straining every ear to listen to our nonsense. She was so dressed up in a picture hat, a spotted veil, a feather boa, and a nouveau art parasol that I never dreamed she was any acquaintance of mine till I happened to catch her eye with a familiar malicious gleam in it. She bowed stiffly and disapprovingly. I nodded back. Mrs. Maggie McGurk in her company clothes! That is a pleasanter expression than she really has. Her smile is due to a slip of the pen. Poor Mrs. McGurk can't understand any possible intellectual interest in a man. She suspects me of wanting to marry every single one that I meet. At first she thought I wanted to snatch away her doctor. But now, after seeing me with Gordon, she considers me a bigamous monster who wants them both. Goodbye. Some guests approach. 11:30 p.m. I have just been giving a dinner for Gordon, with Betsy and Mrs. Livermore and Mr. Witherspoon as guests. I graciously included the doctor, but he curtly declined on the ground that he wasn't in a social mood. Our Sandy does not let politeness interfere with truth. There is no doubt about it, Gordon is the most presentable man that ever breathed. He is so good-looking and easy and gracious and witty, and his manners are so impeccable. Oh, he would make a wonderfully decorative husband. But after all, I suppose you do live with a husband. You don't just show him off at dinners and teas. He was exceptionally nice tonight. Betsy and Mrs. Livermore both fell in love with him, and I just a trifle. He entertained us with a speech in his best public manner, apropos of Java's welfare. We have been having a dreadful time finding a sleeping place for that monkey, and Gordon proved with incontestable logic that since he was presented to us by Jimmy, and Jimmy is Percy's friend, he should sleep with Percy. Gordon is a natural talker, and an audience affects him like champagne. He can argue with as much emotional earnestness on the subject of a monkey as on the greatest hero that ever bled for his country. I felt tears coming to my eyes when he described Java's loneliness as he watched out the night in our furnace cellar, and pictured his brothers at play in the far-off tropical jungle. A man who can talk like that has a future before him. I haven't a doubt but that I shall be voting for him for president in another 20 years. We all had a beautiful time, and entirely forgot, for a space of 3 hours, that 107 orphans slumbered about us. Much as I love the little dears, it is pleasant to get away from them once in a while. My guests left at 10, and it must be midnight by now. This is the 8th day, and my clock has stopped again. Jane forgets to wind it as regularly as Friday comes around. However, I know it's late, and as a woman, it's my duty to try for beauty sleep, especially with an eligible young suitor at hand. I'll finish tomorrow. Good night. Saturday. Gordon spent this morning playing with my asylum and planning some intelligent presents to be sent later. He thinks that 3 neatly painted totem poles would add to the attractiveness of our Indian camps. He is also going to make us a present of 3 dozen pink rompers for the babies. Pink is a color that is very popular with the superintendent of this asylum, who is deadly tired of blue. Our generous friend is likewise amusing himself with the idea of a couple of donkeys and saddles and a little red cart. Isn't it nice that Gordon's father provided for him so amply, and that he is such a charitably inclined young man? He is at present lunching with Percy at the hotel, and I trust, imbibing fresh ideas in the field of philanthropy. Perhaps you think I haven't enjoyed this interruption to the monotony of institution life. You can say all you please, my dear Mrs. Pendleton, about how well I am managing your asylum, but, just the same, it isn't natural for me to be so stationary. I very frequently need a change. That is why Gordon, with his bubbling optimism and boyish spirits, is so exhilarating, especially as a contrast to too much doctor. Sunday morning. I must tell you the end of Gordon's visit. His intention had been to leave at 4, but in an evil moment I begged him to stay over till 9:30, and yesterday afternoon he and Singapore and I took a long cross-country walk, far out of sight of the towers of this asylum, and stopped at a pretty little roadside inn, where we had a satisfying supper of ham and eggs and cabbage. Sing stuffed so disgracefully that he has been languid ever since. The walk and all was fun, and a very grateful change from this monotonous life I lead. It would have kept me pleasant and contented for weeks, if something most unpleasant hadn't happened later. We had a beautiful, sunny, carefree afternoon, and I'm sorry to have had it spoiled. We came back very unromantically in the trolley car, and reached the JGH before 9, just in good time for him to run on to the station and catch his train. So I didn't ask him to come in, but politely wished him a pleasant journey at the porte cochere. A car was waiting at the side of the drive, in the shadow of the house. I recognized it, and thought the doctor was inside with Mr. Witherspoon. They frequently spend their evenings together in the laboratory. Well, Gordon, at the moment of parting, was seized with an unfortunate impulse to ask me to abandon the management of this asylum, and take over the management of a private house instead. Did you ever know anything like the man? He had the whole afternoon and miles of empty meadow in which to discuss the question, but instead he must choose our doormat. I don't know just what I did say. I tried to turn it off lightly and hurry him to his train, but he refused to be turned off lightly. He braced himself against a post and insisted upon arguing it out. I knew that he was missing his train, and that every window in this institution was open. A man never has the slightest thought of possible overhearers. It is always the woman who thinks of convention. Being in a nervous twitter to get rid of him, I suppose I was pretty abrupt and tactless. He began to get angry, and then by some unlucky chance his eye fell upon that car. He recognized it too, and being in a savage mood, he began making fun of the doctor. Old Google Eyes, he called him, and Scatchy, and oh, the awfulest lot of unmannerly, silly things. I was assuring him with convincing earnestness that I didn't care a rap about the doctor, that I thought he was just as funny and impossible as he could be, when suddenly the doctor rose out of his car and walked up to us. I could have evaporated from the earth very comfortably at that moment. Sandy was quite clearly angry, as well he might be, after the things he'd heard, but he was entirely cold and collected. Gordon was hot and bursting with imaginary wrongs. I was aghast at this perfectly foolish and unnecessary muddle that had suddenly arisen out of nothing. Sandy apologized to me with impeachable politeness for inadvertently overhearing, and then turned to Gordon and stiffly invited him to get into his car and ride to the station. I begged him not to go. I didn't wish to be the cause of any silly quarrel between them. But without paying the slightest attention to me, they climbed into the car and whirled away, leaving me placidly standing on the doormat. I came in and went to bed, and lay awake for hours, expecting to hear, I don't know what kind of explosion. It is now 11 o'clock, and the doctor hasn't appeared. I don't know how on earth I shall meet him when he does. I fancy I shall hide in the clothes closet. Did you ever know anything as unnecessary and stupid as this whole situation? I suppose now I've quarreled with Gordon, and I positively don't know over what. And of course my relations with the doctor are going to be terribly awkward. I said horrid things about him. You know the silly way I talk, things I didn't mean in the least. I wish it were yesterday at this time. I would make Gordon go at 4. Sallie. Sunday afternoon. Dear Dr. MacRae, that was a horrid, stupid, silly business last night, but by this time you must know me well enough to realize that I never mean the foolish things I say. My tongue has no slightest connection to my brain, It just runs along by itself. I must seem to you very ungrateful for all the help you have given me in this unaccustomed work and for the patience you have, occasionally, shown. I do appreciate the fact that I could never have run this asylum by myself without your responsible presence in the background. And though once in a while, as you yourself must acknowledge, you have been pretty impatient and bad-tempered and difficult, still I have never held it up against you, and I really didn't mean any of the ill-mannered things I said last night. Please forgive me for being rude. I should hate very much to lose your friendship. And we are friends, are we not? I like to think so. S. McB. Dear Judy, I am sure I haven't an idea whether or not the doctor and I have made up our differences. I sent him a polite note of apology, which he received in abysmal silence. He didn't come near us until this afternoon, and he hasn't by the blink of an eyelash referred to our unfortunate contretemps. We talked exclusively about an ichthyol salve that will remove eczema from a baby's scalp. Then, Sadie Kate being present, the conversation turned to cats. It seems the doctor's Maltese cat has 4 kittens, and Sadie Kate will not be silenced until she has seen them. Before I knew what was happening, I found myself making an engagement to take her to see those miserable kittens at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Whereupon the doctor, with an indifferently polite bow, took himself off. And that apparently is the end. Your Sunday note arrives, and I am delighted to hear that you have taken the house. It will be beautiful having you for a neighbor for so long. Our improvements ought to march along, with you and the President at our elbow. But it does seem as though you ought to get out here before August 7th. Are you sure that city air is good for you just now? I have never known so devoted a wife. My respects to the President, S. McB. July 22nd. Dear Judy, please listen to this. At 4 o'clock I took Sadie Kate to the doctor's house to look at those cats. But Freddie Howland just 20 minutes before had fallen downstairs, so the doctor was at the Howland house occupying himself with Freddie's collarbone. He had left word for us to sit down and wait, that he would be back shortly. Mrs. McGurk ushered us into the library, and then, not to leave us alone, came in herself on the pretense of polishing the brass. I don't know what she thought we'd do, run off with the pelican, perhaps. I settled down to an article about the Chinese situation in the Century, and Sadie Kate roamed about at large examining everything she found, like a curious little mongoose. She commenced with his stuffed flamingo and wanted to know what made it so tall, and what made it so red. Did it always eat frogs? And had it hurt its other foot? She ticks off questions with the steady persistency of an 8-day clock. I buried myself in my article and left Mrs. McGurk to deal with Sadie. Finally, after she had worked halfway round the room, she came to a portrait of a little girl occupying a leather frame in the center of the doctor's writing desk, a child with a queer, elf-like beauty, resembling very strangely our little Allegra. This photograph might have been a portrait of Allegra grown 5 years older. I had noticed the picture the night we took supper with the doctor, and had meant to ask which of his little patients she was. Happily, I didn't. "Who's that?" said Sadie Kate, pouncing upon it. "It's the doctor's little girl." "Where is she?" "Sure, she's far away with her grandma." "Where'd he get her?" "His wife give her to him." I emerged from my book with electric suddenness. "His wife?" I cried. The next instant I was furious with myself for having spoken, but I was so completely taken off my guard. Mrs. McGurk straightened up and became volubly conversational at once. "And didn't he never tell you about his wife?" "She went insane 6 years ago. It got so it weren't safe for to keep her in the house, so he had to put her away. It near killed him. I never seen a lady more beautiful than her. I guess he didn't so much as smile for a year. It's funny he never told you nothing, and you such a friend." "Naturally, it's not a subject he cares to talk about," said I dryly, and I asked her what kind of brass polish she used. Sadie Kate and I went out to the garage and hunted up the kittens ourselves, and we mercifully got away before the doctor came back. But will you tell me what this means? Didn't Jervis know he was married? It's the queerest thing I ever heard. I do think, as the McGurk suggests, that Sandy might casually have dropped the information that he had a wife in an insane asylum. But of course it must be a terrible tragedy, and I suppose he can't bring himself to talk about it. I see now why he's so morbid over the question of heredity. I dare say he fears for the little girl. When I think of all the jokes I've made on the subject, I'm aghast at how I must have hurt him, and angry with myself, and angry with him. I feel as though I never wanted to see the man again. Mercy! Did you ever know such a muddle as we are getting ourselves into? Yours, Sallie. P.S. Tom McComb has pushed Mamie Prout into the box of mortar that the masons use. She's parboiled. I've sent for the doctor. End of Part 17.